Yeah, perfect timing, wasn't it? Chop that thing off. We'll catch it on the tail end of the beginning of the meeting. Hello everybody, welcome to Sector67. If you've never been here before, we do these monthly meetings of 7 minutes to talk about a project or a thing that you've built. As far as I know, we have three presentations. I drug this thing out. I was not intending to talk about it until we tested it, but we'll talk about it and then test it. So anyway, without further ado, Chris can talk to us about hat making. What's that?
We've taken bets.
Taking bets on whether it works? Sure. As long as I get the money both ways, it's fine with me.
Oh. Then we got a nice Mad Max feel.
That wasn't what we were going for. Mad Max, you know, where they were about reusing what they had around. Same thing here. I told Chris if he gives this demo, he's got to make one for everybody, so you have to ask nicely.
Yeah.
It is, it's running already, yeah.
That's right.
I thought about
I think
it.
this will be pretty quick. Sure. You can start it. Alright. So, last month I showed you some motorcycle trophies, part of the trophy collection for the motorcycle ice race people. The people that are going to be winning first place in their classes are going to be getting hats. So, this isn't the final hat, but this is the first hat that Tanya had stitched up for us. So if you've seen Tanya's knitting machine, she does fabulous things. So ask her if you want a custom hat, she can do that. So she provides the hat, but a winter hat always needs a pom-pom, in my opinion. I kind of wanted it. I was looking up gold and green and blue pom-poms for like first, second, third place. And you can find them, but they're not like winter hat pom-poms. So I was like, why aren't these online? And it's because everybody just makes their own, which I didn't know. And so I'm like, I guess I'm gonna have to make pom-poms. So I found some yarn that was close to what Tanya had started on, so I wanted to kind of match. But I went on YouTube basically and saw there's like 4 different methods, but this was the quickest, easiest, dirtiest, cheapest method. Was cutting out a piece of cardboard, and you get 2 discs like this. So to start it, the key is you make the discs about as big as you want your pom-pom to be, and you can make it a little larger, but this hole size, I don't know if there's really mathematical number ratio, but finger hole worked really well for me, and I was kind of going off of what I'd seen in the YouTube videos. So to start it, it really doesn't matter. It's pretty easy. The one key that I found and was one of the tips was to not wind it tight, but just to keep it loose. So you just start winding around and winding around, and you can, where this slot is, makes it a lot easier. There were some people that were taking a ball and shoving it through a hole as they were a full ring, and I'm like, do you really need that? And you could do it that way, but it seemed to be really difficult. And the slot really speeds things up. So you just continue around until you get to where the hole is basically taken up. So I completed this one before the meeting and got to this point. So you've got 2 discs with yarn wrapped all the way around, and between those 2 slots, you basically hold this from opening up on you. But you put the scissors in between the 2 rings, and with the very sharp scissors, that's key, as this took about 6 minutes to do versus the 6 seconds it's going to take to do this one. You pop these all apart and keep it pinched. Grab a loose thread, which I thought I had, but I don't. So I'll make one. And we got 2 now. You just make a knot between the 2 discs, so you go all the way around all of them. And I like to do square knots so that it doesn't come apart, but you make sure it's really good and tight, good and snug. You do a square knot to keep it locked so it won't come apart. And then all you got to do is pop it out of the 2 rings, and you got most of your pom-pom done. So the hardest part now, and seriously, this is the hardest part, is, and you can use the rings as kind of a guide if you need a circle, but you can kind of just tell, because of the way that you wind it up, all the lengths aren't going to be completely equal. So all you do is you just go around, you pinch, and you even them all out with the scissors.
Haircut.
Yeah. And the shorter you go, the more pom-pommy it is. And one thing to keep in mind is the string that you tied it up with is probably what you want to use to sew it on with. So you can do that. But basically go around, trim it out till they're all even. But yeah, the shorter you go, the more pom-pommy stiff it is. So that's why it's good to start with a ring or a circle of cardboard that's a little bit larger than what you want. But it's easy to like overanalyze this. In the end, it's a pom-pom, and you don't really notice all the really uneven parts of it. So that's about it. Sure. Any questions?
What is it in the hat you're wearing half of?
Yeah. Don't know. I don't know why they never put them on baseball caps. One of the interesting things I saw was, since there's time, or not, one video they took a chair, set it up like this, and they took the string and they just ran it around. And then they tied it off, and then cut halfway between each of the lengths. And then they had 4 pom-poms instead. And then they were just going off of like the number of times they went back and forth was how big it was going to be. So you kind of just think about proportions. It all kind of makes sense. So. But yeah, I thought this was kind of clever. It was one of the things I never thought about how pom-pom was made. So when I went to make them, I was like, that's kind of cool.
What are the colors for first, second, and third place?
Oh, I decided to only make them for the people that won first in their class. So, you know, originally it was going to be everybody gets a hat, but then time and money and all things considered, it was just first place.
So they expecting you every year to re-up your game? You know?
Yeah, that's kind of what's going on.
What's the largest pom-pom you can make?
Ooh. How big a piece of cardboard you got and how much yarn do you have? I think that's what it comes down to.
The stiffness of the yarn. Yeah, there's no form of gravity.
Otherwise, it's
Yeah.
just like hair.
It gets hard.
Because of that.
You could take a piece of carpet and then that might be the best.
Thanks, Chris. Alright. Figure out something out. Alright. Anybody else have anything to talk about? I think this will be the shortest meeting ever.
I can do a brief presentation on the gingerbread state capital.
Oh man, a brief, sir.
Yes,
Alright.
I can do very brief.
How about an update on the new building?
It's not your business.
So, a couple of years ago, every year my family had a tradition of doing a gingerbread house. And a couple of years ago, we thought we'd take it to the next level. That Notre Dame plywood model up there was our plywood prototype from 2 years ago. And then we actually rolled gingerbread sheets flat, cut them on the laser, and assembled them with frosting. Did some stained glass with melted sugar. And it was one of those projects that was like, well, that was quite a project, never again. But we did it, so that was nice. Someone from the Madison Children's Museum saw, we did a time-lapse video of that. And someone from the Madison Children's Museum saw it and approached us like February of 2017 saying, hey, this is the 100th anniversary of the state capitol of Wisconsin, the building.
Cool.
Would you like to do a state capitol in gingerbread? So it's like we're gingerbread artists now. And we thought it over and we said yes. And so, I don't know if you've seen us in here doing it or not. So we, with Notre Dame, there was a paper craft model that was somewhat adaptable to gingerbread. Paper craft, you can bend round, cylinder shapes, and there's no thickness in essence of the model, but we adapted that model. For the state capitol, there was no paper craft model. And so what we did was we found a Google Earth 3D map, and we could take measurements off and scale them down. And it was an opportunity to use SketchUp. I want to learn SketchUp a little bit more, and so we used SketchUp, the whole family. It was a family project. You can see my mom is in there, and my wife Laura, and my two sons Luke and Levi are in there, who are lamenting the end of winter break tonight since they couldn't join us. But we did a live build event at the Madison Children's Museum in early December. And so this is the time lapse of that. Some of the internal structure was cut in plywood, but all of the structure that showed was cut out of gingerbread. And that's actually the major, there's a lot of work in the cutting, but the baking of the sheets of gingerbread is very time intensive. And so the Children's Museum had a budget. They hired Carl's Cakes. We developed this recipe. You use a very high gluten flour, and you really mix it up good to get a strong gluten structure in your panels. And then there's a trick to rolling it, because on the laser the focus matters a lot, obviously. So when you roll it flat, we take 1/8" metal rods and a big rolling pin and roll the dough to 1/8" very uniform, and then it bakes up a little bit, and then post-bake we take 3/16" metal rods and we roll again to, well, it's still a little bit to make each sheet flat. Now it's still, when it cools, it warps some, and so you can actually, in essence, make a proofing oven where you take in an oven, you just put some pans with water about 300 degrees, you put it in for 3 minutes and it slumps again and you can make it flat, very flat again. So we've developed some processes for working with the sheets of gingerbread to make them so that they're very flat for cutting. The 3/16 is nice because you can use a 5mm plywood for the prototype and it comes together very nice. So, so we did open source our design. The laptop that never dies. So we open source the design on Thingiverse in case someone else for some reason gets inspired to cut the steak apple out of whatever material, 3/16 steak, they can do that. Yeah, we had a fun time. It was a live build event at the Children's Museum over the course of 2 days. The Children's Museum is a very hands-on environment for like 8-year-old kids that are unsupervised. So, you know, we had all these sort of delicate parts of this Capitol with it. We had a lot of windows and pillars. We did pillars out of candy canes and things. So it was this balancing act of like these kids who are used to running up to whatever in the Children's Museum and like getting their hands on it, which was cool. And us trying to get the thing built before it broke. So I think it still is. You can see it at the Madison Children's Museum without paying admission. It's in by the front. We did you can see us string the LED lights in the live build. We strung LED lights through so kids can come and pick the color on the lights, something like that. Don't know how long it'll last there. They said they'd just keep it up until it sort of, eventually the frosting dries out and the panels start to fall over and things like that. So it'll be interesting to see how long it lasts. Yeah, so also the Notre Dame design is out there. So yeah, there's a link to the video. Here's the file. The files are here, all DXF exported from Fusion 360. No real building instructions, but it's self-explanatory. It is not very probably. But yeah, so that was our early December family project at the Children's Museum. Questions on that at all? The recipe, we open sourced the recipe for the gingerbread as well. We do need a better frosting recipe, something that really cements it. So we did some experimentation since we could re-flatten the dough after it was baked. I said, well, how much can we manipulate this afterwards? And so I took about a 3-inch cylinder and I re-softened a sheet of baked gingerbread for about 10 minutes, and I was able to roll it without cracking to a cylinder like that. So don't know if we're going to do this, but what we could do is we talked about doing like Hogwarts Castle or something that's round towers where we could actually laser cut the detail while it's flat and then roll towers and do them like that. So that's taking it to yet another next level if we do choose to do that. I hope the family can hold it together long enough to get that project done, but if it does, we'll do that. So any questions at all? I did not keep it short, so apologize.
You mentioned you have professional bakers do the baking for you?
Yes.
Did they have any suggestions about how to get? Well, I guess they don't make flat things.
Well, they were a little confused. So the lady at the baker was like, "You'll never be able to cut it once it's baked." And I'm like, "No, we use a laser. We've done it." She's like, "You'll never be able to cut it once it's baked." And I'm like, "Okay, you're gonna just have to trust me on this. We will be able to cut it after."
Maybe they'll want to use the laser cutter for something they're baking.
Yeah, maybe. So they use the recipe pretty much as is, and I don't know if they made any modifications. So they never let us know if they did or not. But they couldn't understand my instructions about rolling with the rods or whatever, so I had to go over and sort of show them how to do that.
Well, I thought they might like talk about adding some egg or something and suggestions about how to get it to the right pliability or something.
Yeah, no, they do have they have what's called a fondant roller, which is a rolling pin with rings of various thicknesses, so they could roll flat. So but they said the rods work just as well. other questions? All right.
So if you were to sell one of these, how much would the finished model go for?
I think I was figuring about $10,000. It's gonna make it like for a while. Honestly, we weren't doing it as a labor of love, it would just be something that would just never be done. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it was an opportunity for Luke and Levi to actually do some Fusion 360 design, but I mean, 30 hours into the digital design of the thing and another 8 hours cutting maybe, and the assembly was probably 2 5-hour days for like 3 or 4 people. I mean, we're going slow, but I can't figure the hourly, it's something that would just never be done unless you're doing it because you can catch it.
Only 10 hours to assemble it?
Well, like with 3 or 4 people working on it, so.
Wow. Pretty good.
Suggestion would be make a lighthouse next year. Just roll 1 tube and go
1, 2 would be done. Could do a little rotating light.
Alright, thanks.
All right.
Anybody else have anything for that?
Or the Washington Monument?
Alright, so this big thing in front of us is for the other building, and I wasn't planning on talking about it, but I thought it'd be fun anyways. So on a Bobcat or a skid steer, after 1992 they unified the attachment plates for it. So in short, you see a little skid loader or a Bobcat on a farm or on a construction site or whatever else, and they have various tools for them. They actually have a ton of tools. Usually you see a bucket or a pair of forks or something along those lines. So it turns out this attachment plate is an open standard published by the Society of Automotive Engineers. And the idea here is that they said Society of Automotive Engineers doesn't have an affiliation with any particular company. So this society can put forth standards, and whether anybody uses them is totally up to the individual companies to choose. So in this case, Bobcat, a long time ago, came up with this quick attach system. They then were able to sort of push SAE and others into saying this standard makes sense, you can apply it to a lot of machines, and a lot of people are already using it on their machines. So why don't we just make it into an open standard, and then anyone can adopt it and use it if they want to. So in short, anyway, you can buy these plates, this attachment plate, for cheaper than you could probably buy the metal, interestingly. But that back plate there was something I ordered on eBay for $126 with free shipping. It showed up from the FedEx guy looking relatively labored, bringing it in a Tyvek bag. So they don't put it in a box or anything, it's just like literally in a bag. The guy's like, I don't know what this is, but it's really heavy. So he brought it in anyway for $126. And it took about 4 days to get here, so it's actually surprisingly fast shipping, all things considered. I think the assumption is that nothing can damage the plate, but the plate can destroy other things, and so the manufacturer obviously doesn't care about their plate getting hurt on the way here. So that worked out fine, it showed up just fine. So we bought a plate anyways, and the reason why I bring this whole thing up is because we need to trench a trench that's about 160 feet long. And I could rent an excavator to do it, but the excavator is about $300 a day to borrow from a rental company. Or we could buy a stump clearing bucket for a skid steer, but they're about $400, $500. And the $400 or $500 ones, the problem with these is that they're too wide. So this V's out, and the trench that we're digging is 24 inches wide. So we want something that's about 4 feet long, but narrower than 24 inches, and it needs to just dig out dirt. So all these buckets are available, but the problem is like, so there's a narrow one here, but it kind of flares at the end, and they're not really long enough. This one's too short, so there's a variety of different designs. I kind of looked at them, and I decided that we would be better off just buying a plate and then finding whatever we found around the shop and building a bucket out of it, because the bucket doesn't really matter what it's made out of. So in short, this is made out of what are called skeletons. These are offcuts from a plasma cutter. These came from a different company that I pick up some material from periodically, and so these are just drop-offs that they throw out in their dumpster and get rid of. But it's all half-inch plate steel. And for those of you that saw us drag it out here, it's pretty heavy. These are usually about 400 pounds combined. I think we're pretty darn close to that, all things in. We haven't tried it yet. That's what I was saying at the beginning, was I was going to go test this and make sure it actually works before we tout the benefits of building our own one. Theoretically, it should work. We're going to find out shortly whether or not it works out well. But worst case, I'll use this to remove the soil, and I'll use a pair of forks that are a lot narrower and pointier to loosen the soil. So this should work no matter what. It's just whether or not I can just go through and dig with this, or whether I have to loosen the soil with a pair of forks and then dig out the width of the trench with this guy. So in short, that's kind of our next step over the other building is take this thing over there and dig a trench so that we can run the drains, so that we can then put concrete on top of all the stuff that we dug out, and then put some bathrooms there and hopefully have a warm-ish space after we get up some insulation. So in short, we've got a shell, sort of, with a few walls missing. But it looks like the weather's supposed to clear up in about 3 days and get a little bit warmer, and so hopefully we'll have some better weather in a couple days and get the rest of the walls framed in and then keep working on the insulation. So yeah, so I just thought it'd be fun to share a random thing we built. Any questions? Yep.
So it looks like you attached some like cylinders to hold the pins between the plate you bought and the bucket. Is that all you did, or?
Yeah, what it is Farm and Fleet sells these. They're called top link pins, and so they're meant for tractors and stuff. And essentially, there's a bushing and then there's a pin that slides in. The idea was rather than using the $130 plate once and welding the bucket to it, because we only need the bucket to trench one trench, and then otherwise we can use the bucket or this plate in the future to do other things, that it would make sense just to put pins on it for now. And we're going to find out how long the pins last. They should be rated for the force we're going to apply to them, but we'll see if that pans out or if they bend or break. Fortunately, they're about $3 for a new pin set, so we can cut them off and weld new ones on if we need to. Other questions about anything?
How deep do you have to?
4 feet at the deepest, up to 0 feet.
Runs the whole length.
So it's 110 feet long, or no, like 140 feet long. And yeah, it starts at 4 feet and goes up to 0, so it's just got a grade along the length of it.
Is it a storm drain? What is it?
It's the drain for the building. So we dug inside, or we're digging inside the building to run a drain in the floor, underneath the floor.
Oh.
So there's no drain at all,
So it is
except for on one
it's
side.
the sewer drain.
Yeah, it's a sewer drain. Yep. Then we'll put water in the same trench, just because it's convenient and it's open. And then in the future, if we needed to, we could run water along the ceiling, but you can't run the sewer along the ceiling because it won't drain. So that's the problem. Any other questions? Anybody want to help dig? No? You guys are killing me. So the hope is we can dig this out deeper than it needs to be, and then we'll either backfill with gravel or sand, and then grade this gravel or sand, make it easier to grade. Fortunately, underneath the building is very low moisture content, so even though the ground is frozen, there's so little moisture from the past 70 years of being underground that it should be pretty dry. So the Bobcat didn't have too much trouble digging the soil out or moving the soil, so it should be alright. Outside it's frozen and it's hard to dig, but inside it's not too bad. Cool. Yeah, like I said, I'll probably take it over there tomorrow. We'll find out whether it works or not. Cool. Anybody else have anything else? Alright. Take it
Hello, my name is Caroline. I don't have any slides or anything to show on the screen. I started doing a project. I intended to finish it for Christmas. I did not, but I thought it was pretty cool anyway. So what I've got here is I did some laser cutting, and I wanted to make this design. This design is the outline of a lake, and it's where my grandparents' house is. And the clear plastic, this is acrylic, is the lake, and then I put sort of a border and wood around it. And actually didn't even come up with this until I started cutting pieces out on the laser cutter. I thought I would stack 3 different sheets of material next to each other, but then I realized that I could actually just wrap one piece around the other one if I got the cuts just right. So you can't just cut out the wood, so there's wood like wrapping all the way around the edge of the plastic. When they fit together like this, so there's 2 pieces. But you can't just cut out using the exact same shapes and make them fit together like this, right? They're too loose, they'll just fall right through each other. So I had to offset one of the pieces, and I ended up offsetting the wood to make the hole on the inside very, very slightly bigger. So it is 1/4 of a millimeter offset to make these fit together. And it might not be the perfect press fit yet. I might try to make it a little bit looser than this because it's a little bit difficult to push them together. And I have cracked the wood at a tiny spot there. And I think I'm getting a crack in the acrylic. But it's kind of a work in progress figuring out what's the proper distance. I also wondered whether if it got really cold, like if this was left outside in my car, would one or the other of the pieces expand or contract at a different rate and break? I left it in my car for a while and that didn't happen. I didn't try to abuse it or anything. I didn't like drop it on the floor or anything. But I was pleasantly surprised that it did not actually crack or break any of the parts. I can pass this around. This material is a textured acrylic, and I have two different textures. I got these as samples from a plastic company, but they're pretty cool for a lake. And then I've also been experimenting with coloring it. So this is there's a paint that lets you make like imitation stained glass. It's for little stained glass kits that you make out of plastic. And I put it on this textured acrylic. It looks pretty cool. That's light pass through. That's actually two different colors, a green and a blue, kind of blended. So anyway, it's a work in progress. This was going to be a Christmas ornament, probably for next year, or just like not Christmas ornament. I haven't figured out how to hang it yet. It's got like a weird shape that the balance point is right about there. But it was a cool project. I'd love to know if someone knows a little bit better about how to make the press fit work exactly. I've just been doing trial and error, and it seems to work okay. That's all I got.
I wonder if you could set up a router in the wood shop and just route in just a little bit of an undercut all the way around, so that all you do is just take a piece and run the inside around on the router,
Okay.
and then that might make enough that you could really make a kind of a bigger offset, and then just would pop in and snap in.
Like there'd be a bevel to the
Yeah.
like, edge of the frame part.
Yeah, you'd have to get the right size fit. So it'd be the thickness or just slightly bigger than what the plastic is.
Nope.
For the thickness, I think that maybe works pretty good.
The other trick with the laser, I don't know if you noticed, but the laser cuts a taper. So if you cut one piece and then you flip it over and then mesh the two together, the two tapers will slide against each other and they'll lock in. But if you set them, if you measure it the other way and you try to push them together, then the two tapers will only touch on an edge. So you kind of want to cut one upside down and push them together. Sometimes that helps too. Sometimes it hurts because it makes it not fit together properly. So that's kind of a thing to play with.
I may have accidentally done that because some of those I did cut in mirror image because I was going to engrave letters on the back so that the front side would be smooth and the letters would be in the back. But so I might have accidentally done that without knowing.
It depends a lot on the focus. So if it's out of focus, it makes more of a wedge than it does.
I was not really sure how well this focused on the surface of the textured acrylic, because if you put like the flat thing to focus it on, it's kind of on the top surface, and this isn't a consistent thickness, obviously. So, don't know how much that affected it.
I didn't realize it was the same thickness, so my idea might not work as well as I thought.
Oh, okay,
I
yeah.
thought there was kind of a keeping area for it. I thought the plastic was a bit thinner.
I think I can get it in different thicknesses, so it may be possible to get a thinner one. I just happened to find plywood that was exactly the same thickness as these without intending to. I just bought them separately and they happen to be the same.
Any other questions? Cool. Thanks. Alright, that's all that I know of presentations. Nobody else? Cool.
How are things going at the new building?
They're going pretty well. Unfortunately, everyone's scared of the cold. So Jeff and Heather and I worked yesterday, and we put up 12 feet worth of insulation on the western half of the building. So we have 2 inches of insulation on about half of the long face of the building. Now it's getting to windows, so now we got to cut the insulation to fit the windows. So this takes more time. What I was doing is going up on the bobcat forks and then putting it up high, and then using a ladder down low. That works pretty good, but then when you have to cut it, it's hard to cut up on the bobcat. So we'll have to figure out, have somebody on the ground cutting while somebody else is installing. we'll get there. It's supposed to warm up though in about 3 days, and hopefully that'll be a little bit more appealing. So we're doing pretty well. We got a couple of big steps coming up in the next 2 weeks-ish to get the plumbing figured out so we can start work on the floor, so reform the floor. And then once the floor is done, then we get to start building interior walls from there. So,
And we move all this in the spring.
well, everybody here, they already volunteered to help, so it's gonna be great. Yeah, the landlord's still talking in April that this building's gonna go away, so we're gonna figure out one way or the other move things, whether it's the bulldozer just pushing them slowly that way, or whether it's us carrying them. We'll sort it out, but that'll be, I think, something we can do incrementally here as soon as the building's walled in. It'll make more sense to start to shift things over there slowly. So, yes. No question. All right.
I have a question.
All right.
Will we have an iron pour?
We are having an iron pour. It's a great question. It's on February 10th. And Alyssa told me it's on February 10th, and that's all that I know. So I'll put up something on the website tonight, and she'll at some point have those animals that we can buy. It'll be here, yeah. Yep, I figured rather than trying to figure out stuff over there, it'd make more sense to do it here. Plus in the iron pour, if it's like -10 out and there's no heater over there, it's gonna not be good. So I figured here at least we know the heat usually works, so it'll be good.
Bathrooms here.
Yeah, and there's bathrooms, is another good point.
So what do you need people to do, skilled or unskilled?
Yeah, so the next steps are, when it warms up here in about 3 days, we need to finish studding the second floor wall. We got like one 20-foot section that's open that we just need to put studs up and then put paneling up. But on the first floor, we need to take all the materials and anything that's on the first floor anywhere, all has to go in one corner because we need to pour the floor everywhere else. And so we've done that for part of the building, but a lot of it still has a variety of things all over the place. So we've been trying to consolidate. So we started doing that yesterday. Jeff came in and worked for 5 or 6 hours, just cleaning up all the tools, putting them all back in the toolbox, just moving stuff back to sort of a logical location. So it's inside, which is a lot warmer than it is outside, and it's literally just moving stuff until we get everything into one corner. So we're going to re-pour about 2/3 of the floor to make it flat, and then there's 2 parts that are already at the height that is as high as we want it to be. So we're going to pour it up to meet those. So a portion of the floor will stay, and then the rest of the floor will get replaced because it's too. The slab is all over the place. It's way too random. So we're gonna straighten that out, ish. Can't be perfect. That'd be too good for us. It's gotta be flat.
Just clapping,
Making the floor flat.
Good idea. Took a while to get to that point.
Any other questions? Basically, the only day I haven't worked the past like 5 days is today because I had to get everything cleared up for the meeting. So the other thing we're doing is you saw the big pile of aluminum outside. We're cleaning the bolts out of the aluminum. The aluminum is worth 55 cents a pound, and a panel of aluminum about yay big is like a couple bucks. So it makes sense to clean it out. Eric worked on it earlier, and he they're about 200 pounds in like an hour and a half. It doesn't take a super long time. So that's the other one. It's loud though because we're using the pneumatic chisel to chisel the bolts out. So it just pushes the bolts right out of the aluminum. So it's not the most fun job, but it's relatively quick, so not too bad. So we're gonna do the remainder that's sitting outside, which isn't much left, and then the rest of it sitting behind the building on the south side. We'll do that in the spring.
Is there more insulation to put on?
There's more insulation to put on the outside. Yep. So
When's that?
whenever, all ongoing things. So I gotta test this thing tomorrow. At any point, we have more than 2 people. You can put up insulation, and then cleaning is anybody who wants to stop by and help clean up the inside. The second floor is studs. We need about 6 people to do because you need a couple people putting up sheet products. Well, there's about 3 or 4 people inside putting up the studs. So, but there's only a couple walls left.
So you'll let us know on the list, right?
Yeah. Yep. I'll send out an email.
I haven't made it over recently, but
You're the part of the
I'll try to
problem
come
now, yeah.
at least one more time. 1 or 2 more times.
No, yeah, and it's getting, the more that's walled in, the warmer it gets, so we're getting a lot closer on that. The first floor is pretty much completely enclosed, and the second floor is getting pretty close, so not so bad. Any other questions related to things? Cool. Alright, so we can go around and say who we are and where you're otherwise, and go from there. Go ahead.
I'm Josh. I build sunflower products and raise livestock on pasture and generally paper.
I'm Bob, consumer electronics.
This is my first time here.
Chris, I'm a member, I'm an engineer, and I make compounds.
Jeremy Nixon, Raspberry Pi.
Francis, graphic artist, net maker stuff. And
Richard, member, artist, glass floor.
Scott, member, gingerbread artist.
Daryl, I'm just stopping by to check you out.
I'm down, maybe some free years. I'm Doug, I have to escort Jack everywhere he goes, he's a member and I'm not, so.
I'm Jack, and I like to go.
Davi, I'm a member, mostly software. I like to play board game Go. And teach it.
I'm John, I'm retired, do metal work here, I've been a member for as long as Sector's been here, I think. I'm pretty close.
I'm Chuck. I'm a semi-member, a hangout member, what do you call it?
Yeah.
And I spend quite a bit of my time as a volunteer for the Wisconsin Science Museum. I'm hoping to get over here and do some projects for that, but most of what I'm doing right now, I'm doing elsewhere.
I'm Caroline, I'm a cartographer, so I design maps.
Richard was looking for help doing vector graphics with Inkscape, so if anybody wants to help, he's Inkscape or Illustrator, one of the two, but you gotta then get Illustrator going on his computer, so that'll be the fun part. Anyway, thanks everybody for coming. You're welcome to hang around or harass Chris to make pom-pom, it'll be fun. Just don't stub your toe on a giant piece of metal.